Good evening and a very warm welcome to the Love Audio Production YouTube channel. My name is Paul Webber. Great to have you along today, tonight, this afternoon, this evening, or whatever time of day it is, wherever you are watching this around the world. Please do let us know in the comments, won't you? And they should hopefully flash up on screen. We'd love to hear from you tonight. Right, so tonight is a little slightly different. So we're going to test drive. He says, reaching over for the microphone. We're going to test drive the new, oh, no, not the new, but the Rode NT1-A microphone tonight. That's in there, and we're going to be doing that a little bit later on. So it's in its holder. It's in the kind of shaped barrier. So we'll take a listen to that and see how that sounds compared to the Tascam TM80 that I'm using currently. And also we're going to find out a little bit more about the little village that I live in called Lustleigh. There's plenty going on currently, and if you do your social media homework, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you're ready for all of that, let's get going, shall we? Love Audio! All right, so where do we start? My gosh, it's a very good question. I'm lucky enough to live above a pub in the middle of a beautiful village called Lustleigh. It's on the edge of Dartmoor, and it's a stunning venue, and it's a stunning place to live, and it's nestled on the outskirts of Dartmoor, which is the national park here in the UK, one of the national parks here in the UK anyway. And it's a very popular route for people walking and cycling between Dartmoor and Bovey Tracy and down towards the coast and all that kind of stuff. So we are in a very fortunate position, and a lot of the places around, in and around Lustleigh, are what they call chocolate box houses, if you will. So they're very much thatched cottages, beautiful picturesque scenery all around, stunning walks to go on, and just a great vibe all round. So I thought it would be fitting for me to kind of give you an overview about what's going on outside my door, literally, as we speak. We have a film crew that have descended onto the village. The production company is called Plum Jam, and the code name for the filming is called Brown Cat. That's all I'm allowed to tell you, but I can show you a little bit of a slideshow that I've put together for some photos that have gone on around the village today. So have a quick take a look at this, if you will. So this is a kind of rolling road thing that goes over some wires. So that's not particularly interesting, but it is what it is. And then you see a collection of vintage cars. Let's go back a step. Hang on. Slow down. There we go. Let's pause that and go back to that one. So, yeah, these are a collection of vintage cars seen in a field just near here. The next biggest town to here is either Moreton Hampstead or Bovey Tracy. Now, these were seen in a field near Bovey Tracy. So you can see a collection of kind of oldish vehicles there anyway. Okay. So, and then we move on to the pub itself. Now, this is a plaque on the wall that tells you about the history of the place. So the 1600s, this particular building was first formed, if you will, first built. And it's had many uses since then, including a pub, obviously, which its current state is, and also a hotel. And it used to be a coaching house, like a gatehouse, if you will. So that tells you a little bit about that. So when you walk up the corridor here, you can read all about that, which is really, really interesting. It's called The Cleeve, and that's the outside of the pub with the light on, which is superb. And ignore the kind of draped Christmas lights. They've been taken down now because A, they don't work, and B, I don't think they look very nice anyway. So we've taken them off of the top of the building. And we've fitted some new lights underneath the porch area as well, okay, which is pretty cool. So we move on. And the next one on this slide is a couple of our roast dinners, which is absolutely stunning. The food here is gorgeous, by the way. Oh, and this phone box appeared at the end of the wall as you come into the car park for the pub. You can see the church there in the background, just ahead. And so this phone box appeared out of nowhere yesterday, which was quite interesting. And also there's to the right of that white wall, you can just about see the top of a lamppost, and that lamppost didn't exist before yesterday. So, you know, by the magic of TV and film and all that kind of stuff, these things have been brought into the village gradually, and have placed themselves in the village of Lustleigh, which is superb. Now, this is a beautiful picture of the Primrose Tea Rooms just down the road here in Lustleigh. And to the left of that, you'll see on the green is the monument. Okay, so that's a beautiful place there. And to the right of the monument there, you'll see the cars that we saw in the earlier shot. So they've been brought into the village a little earlier on this evening during daylight, and they've been parked up on the left-hand side, which is cool. So we move on to the next slide, and there you'll see a whole load of people. This is from my window, by the way, and I've deliberately blurred the shots, obviously, to protect the innocent and all that kind of stuff. So, but what you can see there is a whole hubbub of things going on, leading up to what can only be described as nearly 100 people outside my door to the flat. Now, I'm on the second floor, so it's not right outside the door, but you know what I mean? So, you know, I can see that from the flat. But it's fascinating to me. I always love the kind of background and behind the scenes things of, you know, either filming or production or audio, visual, whatever it might be. And so I thought I'd take a couple of little shots there just to give you a flavour of what's going on inside the village of Lustleigh as we speak. And they're here until, I think it's Thursday lunchtime. And then we're open again Thursday evening as the pub continues. But I hope you enjoyed that little slideshow, just to give you a little flavour about, you know, what's going on in the village here. And we move on. All right, now in the description of the video today, I did say that we'd be test driving the Rode NT1-A microphone. Now, it's a condenser mic, and it's been lent to me by a friend of mine. I do like the sound of it. I tried it earlier on today, and I do like the sound of it, so I may well be asking him to kind of loan it to me on a full-time basis, if you know what I mean. Depending on the cost, obviously, right? It's because I'm currently using the Tascam TM80, which is a great microphone. We looked at these mics the other day, didn't we? We kind of test drove a couple of other things as well. But yeah, so this is the condenser mic, the Tascam TM80. What I'm going to do is mute this one, and then we'll have a listen to how that one sounds. And also, if I can bring it up at the same time, and hopefully the battery will last. Give me 2 seconds while I sort it out. Let's have a look here. What I want to do is bring up the NDI camera on my phone, and then I can show you what we're doing on the desk itself. Okay, so give me 2 seconds while we try and sort that out. Let's have a look at the NDI picture a second while it all goes a bit wobbly. Hang on. That's not coming in there yet, but hopefully it will. Let's have a look here. NDI. And if I put it into the holder, just in, sorry, I know you can't see anything. Hang on a second, guys. Let's go back to the main cam. So if I put it in the holder here, you should hopefully be able to see the desk and any EQing that we were doing. Because we talked a little bit about EQ last time, didn't we? And what kind of settings you can have and all that kind of stuff. So give me 2 seconds while I dial that in, because that's not going to appear otherwise. Let's see if we can start that off properly with the NDI. And it's not coming in just yet. Let's bring in the NDI as a new camera, because sometimes when you kind of restart and you know, look at different settings and things like that, you sometimes have to reinstall certain objects and certain assets that you might have already had in the other you know, in the other system that you have. So what I'm going to do is bring that in, hopefully as an NDI camera. Give me 2 seconds while I try and do that. Oh, sorry. Hang on, let's have a look here. So that can be cancelled. Let's try something else. Hang on a minute. Shush. Cancel that. So let's try something else here. Where are we? More. And we go to camera, NDI. And then hopefully that will come up nice and clearly. Let's have a look here. Not coming up at all so far. Give me 2 seconds, guys, whilst I try and find that. There we go. Okay, that's not coming up at all. Give me 2 secs while we fiddle about with something a minute. anyway, it's not an issue. I can just talk you through what we're doing as regards, the settings on this one as well. So let me mute the one I'm currently talking into, and then we'll go over to the one that we're talking about, which is the Rode NT. And you may remember from previous streams that I've done that I had a Rode NT shotgun mic. Thank you. Shotgun mic. I'd laugh like anything if that started off the camera, because I've just dropped it on the floor. But yeah, I had a Rode NT shotgun mic, which was overhead and therefore out of shot, which is pretty good. And it was a good quality as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this sounds in comparison to this one. So we're going to mute this one now. And then we're going to unmute this one. So actually, I think this sounds really kind of nice and rich vibes. So it does have a lot of bass on it, so I may roll off the bass. I've got the low cut currently, so if I kind of dial that in a bit further, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can hear that cutting off the lower end. But I'm going to dial it back to about between 40 and 50 hertz there, so that's rolling off any bass notes from the bottom end. But it's quite clear at the top. I haven't had to add any treble or any top end or any high frequencies to this particular EQ, which is nice. I'm just going to turn it around slightly. I'm going to block the view, I know, but I want to be kind of facing it, face on, if you will, as if I'm doing a voiceover. So, that's the kind of level of volume that I'll be doing. And roughly speaking, about that distance away from the microphone. I haven't got any gauze in front of it, and it's not popping too much. I am trying to talk away from it when I say pop or F, because you can hear that wind going across the diaphragm as we did last time. Do you remember? So if I wanted to dial any top end in, I could do that by just raising the gain there, and that's kind of giving it a little bit more sparkle at the top end, as you can probably tell. But you know what? I don't think it needs it, so I'm just going to keep that at 0. If I wanted to, get rid of any sibilance, if you will, then I kind of drop that down a bit. But it kind of makes it sound like I'm lisping a little bit, and I want to be able to hear that kind of clarity. If I'm doing a voiceover for a client, I want them to be able to hear each syllable of the words that I'm saying, so that when they come to mix it at their end, they can hear with clarity the kind of words that I'm saying, if you get my drift. So actually, I don't think that's a bad mic. I think the retailer for about 133 UK pounds. I was looking online earlier. That doesn't include the gauze for the front, the windshield. It doesn't include the cradle, I don't think, either. It's just literally the microphone in a box. It doesn't even come with a cable. But luckily, I've got plenty of XLR cables around, so that was not an issue. But actually, I think if you're looking at that in comparison to this one sounds a little more boxy. But again, I can dial in that tone that it's picking up mid-range. And then we go back to this one. This one's got a bit more bottom end, I'll give you that, but I have rolled off the low end. So, in comparison, I guess we're looking at, I don't know, maybe a touch less bass on this one, and then maybe a touch more, kind of mid-range. If I unmute both of them, I can flip between the two, and you can get a better idea of how these guys are sounding. This is sounding bassier, right? And then this one sounds not quite so bassy. So let's dial in the settings for this microphone and look at the low cut. And I'm rolling off the low cut now. That sounds a little bit more like that one. However, this one seems to have a little more, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just a little more mid-range clarity. So it may be stronger in the mid-range than this one is. And then going back to this one, yeah, there's like a, I can't describe it. It's kind of almost like mid-range boxy sounds. If I go to EQ and then I can just, I can drop that off or then raise it. So that's the kind of frequency that I'm looking for. I'm going to narrow the Q, if you will, to find out where that's. I'm trying to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, there's one there. But two. But I've got my speakers on very slightly, so I think that's just causing a little bit of feedback. It's probably just about there. So if I drop that down and then drop it down some more below the line, you can't see that, I know, because I've got the camera on. However, then that kind of sounds a little bit more like this one. Although, no, actually, this is much stronger, isn't it, to be fair? So maybe that's a gain issue. So let's have a look at the gain on that one. Drop down the gain on that one a little bit. And then they start to sound a little bit more similar. You know, if you go from one to the other, then they start to sound a little bit more similar than, to each other. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty good comparison. But I do like the sound of this mic. I am quite interested. Brad, thank you very much for lending me this one like you did the other one. That Studio Spares one we tested last week. That was pretty cool too. So, yeah. So this is the Rode NT1-A condenser studio mic. There it is. Looks pretty nice. And like I said, it doesn't have a windshield on it. So I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's obviously you can hear the bass and the Fs and the Ps going across the diaphragm on that one. But if I put that on instead, Peter Piper picked a piece of pickled pepper. It's not picking up any plosives from my speech there, is it? So that's quite good. And I'll raise the volume a little bit. I haven't got any compression on there. Which I could do, I suppose. Put a bit of compression. Oh my gosh, let's not do too much. Hang on. Let me turn the speakers down because I'm getting too much feedback. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, that's okay. That's pretty clear. But give it some more of the. So look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 2, 2, 2. Check, check, check. There we go. So that's more like it, I think. And then this one here is And there's still one of the frequencies, and I can't work out which one it is. I will just keep dialing in there and trying to find that frequency from there that I need to cut out. But all in all, I think not a bad test, to be honest. All right, so I had a couple of questions come in on email and message last week following our test of those microphones and the EQ and everything else. They were asking me, what frequencies should they use when they're dialing in their particular microphone. I think they were talking about an SM58, a Shure SM58, which of course is a dynamic mic, not a condenser mic. And I very simply said, it's down to you. I can't prescribe a certain setting for your microphone. You're just going to have to kind of play around with it, do a few test recordings and just play around with the settings. If you have a Behringer X32 like I do, or any other mixer, come to that. Just play around with the EQ, the high mids, the lows, and the low mids and the lows, and also try rolling off the bass notes as well on a low cut. And if it's not quite crisp enough, then just raise that high end and see how you get on. But like I said, I can't prescribe particular settings for individual microphones and individual people, because your voice is different from the next person's voice and different from my voice and all that kind of stuff. So it's worth looking at your own and listening to that, doing a few recordings and then playing that back. So that's the kind of advice that I can give you on that. If you have any other questions, drop them in the comments. And, obviously I look at the comments on a weekly basis, and just if I can answer them, I certainly will do. But if you have any videos that you'd like me to cover as regards the X32 mixing desk, or any microphones that come along that you might need some extra help with, then again, reach out and drop us a line in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. But listen, thanks so much for watching tonight, and I'm sorry it's such a bit of a short, truncated broadcast tonight, but like I said, there are plenty of things going on outside. I still need to be downstairs in the pub to kind of wrap things up when they finish recording at 2 a.m. So it may be a late night, so I'm going to kind of call it quits there, but I do hope you can join me next week, and we'll chat some more then. In the meantime, thanks for watching. See you later.